Hello, and welcome back everybody to another episode of From the Heart. And what I'd like to do today is take a little bit of a trip through nostalgia, through one of the very first books that I ever covered on this channel, and through one of the very first comic books that I actually ever bought. Something that would bring me so much inspiration to kind of share all these weird and horrific stories that I've been doing, and a story that at the time I just wasn't ready to. But now as I've actually kind of found my format and know how to structure a video for the most part, it's something that I'm absolutely dying to share with you all, because what this would happen to be is a story through the mind of an absolute psychopath, and a story that at the time actually made me really angry and really confused, because at the time I really had no idea about comic book lore, about any kind of previous events, and how many different writers could kind of just write stories about things that, never really happened. And actually happens to be a story that I find pretty terrifying when you get down to it. And who this will be written by is by Brian Boland himself, a man who would not only write, but as well as illustrate this, and where you can find the story is in the very back of Batman The Killing Joke Deluxe Edition. One of my all-time favorite Batman stories, and something that is written by Alan Moore, but after finally revisiting this story after about 2 years, I realized just how much I actually love this book. The Killing Joke is something that I'd absolutely love to kind of come back to, as I do believe it is the second comic book that I ever covered on this channel, and while I would like to go back to it, it is the story today that I would like to show you. A story about a young man who believes himself to be good, who actually kind of wants to test this scenario by doing something bad, proclaiming to himself that anybody can be a good person, but it's the people who can do something so cruel and unnecessary, and still manage to find that being good is something that feels better to their heart. But as we'll see throughout this story, this just really isn't the case, because anybody with these kind of thoughts, anybody with these kind of motives and intentions, couldn't really be a good person at the center of it. You can't really just test out being bad just to see if you really are good. You can't really just murder somebody to prove to yourself that it doesn't feel good to your heart. And definitely is something that makes me want to seek out more of Brian Boland's work, as he is a man who has worked for DC Comics for such a long time, and to actually have the ability to work with such the likes of Alan Moore, a man who would be so specific in the artistry that he would need for every single thing that he's ever written, a man who has really been, pretty frustrating for anybody to work with. Brian Boland has really been an illustrator that I have always cherished. But yes, everybody, let's just get right into this. I really do think it's going to be something that we can all enjoy together, and where this story would take place is in the small apartment of a man who began to feel something darker rise up from within him. I don't consider myself a bad person. On the whole, I consider myself a good person. I'm good to my parents, I treat my girl right and take her out and buy her stuff, and I go to church every Sunday. But I've decided that just once, I want to do a really bad thing. And I mean, a really, seriously bad thing. Cause we're put on this earth with free will. We can choose to do this or that, and we can choose to be good or bad. But sometimes I think most people are good and not bad only because they're scared that they might go to jail or hell or someplace. And some guy once said, anything done out of fear has no moral value. Well, I think that's right, and I figure the only way you can be truly good is if you've tried being good, and if you've tried being bad, and being good feels better. So what is it to be this one bad thing? It's gotta be something completely cruel, and horrible, and unnecessary, and motiveless. Cause getting caught just is not in my agenda. And with these coming panels of just watching this man kind of rattle off to himself, sitting in front of the camera, he'll begin to explain what this one bad thing would be. And it really is something totally cruel and unnecessary, as he begin to show us a vision of a disused sewer and a place where he plans to kind of kidnap a girl and kind of chain her up to the floor and allow this woman to starve, and thinking to himself that it needs to be something that is going to kind of tear her entire family apart, something that nobody will ever get an answer to, and something that will never leave an ounce of closure for. But upon kind of thinking more about this strange scenario, he'll begin to know to himself that it needs to be something bigger, something that is really going to leave a mark on Gotham City, something that is really going to tear everybody apart and be remembered forever. And as this young man would go on to explain that this needs to be somebody famous, that he's thought about actually doing this to the Pope, but this couldn't really possibly be an option because the Pope is always in his Pope-mobile, surrounded by bulletproof glass as well as bodyguards, and that this simply simply won't work. And truly being honest with himself, realizing, that he's never going to step foot in Italy. And he starts realizing that this is going to have to be a very famous man from Gotham City. And who this would happen to be is, yes, you've probably guessed it, would have to be the pride and joy of Gotham City itself, the Batman. Which really is kind of a tall order for a man to actually go right for the bat himself, a man who is the self-described best detective in the world. But with the next coming panels, we'll begin to announce his plans. It'll be no problem. I've got a gun. My dad gave it to me, and he has a whole collection. He's a great believer in a citizen's right to bear arms. It's a gun like a million others in the city. I'll do the deed. My dad even taught me how to shoot. And then I'll leave the scene. I won't leave a calling card, a double-headed coin, or a coded riddle. And I won't laugh like a madman. I'll just leave without a trace. And I mean, for all I know, he could be in a secret hideout somewhere, watching over a secret surveillance systems, monitoring everything I record on this tape. But I'm sure he isn't, because he's one of the good guys, and spying on innocent people would be wrong. No, right now he's on the trail of some criminal. His great bat wings unfurled against the night sky, striking terror into the hearts of the guilty, an inspiration and a comfort to the innocent. He'll be sadly missed, especially by me. One day he'll be face to face with Two-Face, or he'll be tangling with Poison Ivy, or in the lair of those three guys with animal masks whose names I can never remember. And at last, the villain will know the game's up. There will be a fight and a thrilling chase involving an enormous typewriter or something. A swift and divisive climax, and the good guy will make a dramatic exit, leaving the bad guy to ponder the errors of his ways. 'Cause let's face it, crime doesn't really pay. And just for one moment, the Batman will pause, turn his face illuminated by a single light, a splendid avenger of the night. And then from a dark alley, or a window high up, or a grassy knoll, or some other place, there'll be a glint, and then, bang! And he'll be dead. And not upon a first read for this entire thing, this little scene of Batman being directly shot in the head by a totally random stranger just kind of sitting in the dark really left me in shock. I had absolutely no idea whether or not this actually happened, if this was some sort of canon event. But fast forward to the future, and after reading so many different graphic novels about Batman dying, I finally understand that this never really truly happened. And for me, this isn't really the canon death that I personally choose for the Batman. As I'd have to say, my favorite story about the death of the Batman would have to be whatever happened to the Caped Crusader. And while this is a story that it would seem that not a lot of people really like, is, probably one of my all-time favorite Batman stories. And a story that honestly would bring a tear to my eye, and something that later in the future I do plan to cover. It would be this story that would always leave me in utter awe. Coming right from the beginning of it and just watching this man kind of proclaim all these crimes to a video camera, it truly does portray a man who is, totally unhinged, a true psychopath, and something that I never would have seen coming. Especially at the time when I first started getting into all these graphic novels, and actually being only the second one that I ever read, and the only one preceding this would be The Boys. I'd never really quite seen anything like this. I had no idea that Batman had stories like this. At the time, I really only saw Batman as the Caped Crusader, the man who kind of assails through the night, fighting criminals back and forth. And at the time, I'd really only seen darkness out of Batman through Batman and Spawn, which, as we all know, and something that I've covered on this channel, is just kind of wacky, delightful, and goofy. But for something that would be hidden in the back of an Alan Moore story, could we really expect anything less? I mean, this is really a story that does convey a lot of emotion, that does kind of bring the reader such dissonance and, fear for, that you never know who is lurking around the corner, who is having thoughts like this. And it truly is one of my favorite shocking Batman tales, and something that I don't think a lot of people have really ever heard of. And something that I really do believe that Brian Boland wrote with a lot of heart and mind. But after the strange scene of watching this man kind of describe a murder that he's going to do, all in the act of deciding of whether or not he is actually good down to the core of it, we would cut to the next panel watching Batman fall to the ground. And yes, I shall miss him alright. And I don't mean I won't hit him. No, the bullet will definitely find its mark alright. But as I said before, I will miss this man. I've always been his greatest fan. But at the same time, I'm also his greatest enemy. And before anybody finds him lying there, I'll be long gone. I'll destroy this tape, and I won't have a motive. I won't leave a cliche. Because at the end of the day, I'm just an innocent guy. Then I think I'll finish my college education, marry my girlfriend and have a couple of kids. A boy and a girl will be nice. Live a good and blameless life and go to heaven when I die. And this would be the end of the story, and something that is just, so completely wild to me, as this man would, still proclaim to himself that he is a good man, and that he really is just trying to kind of test his inner morality. And I think the most fascinating part of this, and something that I think every villain in Gotham could kind of take a note from, is that he's not going to leave any clues. He's not going to leave a riddle. He's not going to maniacally laugh off in the middle of the night, or kind of display himself on a TV screen that would go across the entirety of Gotham City. That he's simply going to wait for Batman to be standing alone in the alley, kind of taking in the night, and just shoot this man directly in the head, and then just leave in the darkness, in the veil of night. It's something that I find so absolutely wild, and at the time I was thinking, what a perfect villain, He's not so extra, he's not going to be doing anything, he's not going to spend a month making some kind of giant typewriter or some kind of crazy fiasco for the Batman to go to. He's simply just going to pull a Glock and shoot this man when he least expects it. And overall, it's just something that leaves me with so much shock every single time I read this, and I couldn't be happier to finally come back after all these years and kind of reread this story. And it's something that just brings me back to the time when I first started this channel, about the excitement I had to actually start seeking out all these different books, because at the time, and you can go back to some of these other videos, I think I had a stack of comics about yay big on this thing, and it's something that I personally like to go back and watch and just kind of see how far I've really come, how far I've really kind of slipped in my own format. And I think the Batman the Killing Joke will truly always be something that personally I find very nostalgic, as well as, like rereading Autumnal or The Boys or The Three Jokers. It really was a time where I, began to find such passion for all these different stories, and something I'm so glad that I did. But yes, everybody, I highly recommend you go pick up this copy of Batman the Killing Joke. I want to say it's like $12 on Amazon, and basically, until I reread this thing a couple days ago, I never really realized it was by Alan Moore. I always thought it was just by Brian Boland, but apparently not so. But now, knowing that, and after reading the entirety of Swamp Thing as well as countless other Alan Moore stories, I can definitely see it, because Batman the Killing Joke is pretty dark when you get right down to it, and it's really good actually watching the Batman come up in the first coming panels and kind of describing the Joker that they need to stop, that they don't need to kill each other, only to find out that yet again the Joker has escaped. And what would proceed after this with Joker shooting Barbara Gordon directly in the spine and kind of abducting her father and making him, get naked and go through this wild carnival ride, trying to literally break this man's mind. It truly is a good read, and something that I think we're going to be getting back into at some point. It's something that I really like to put a cinematic flair onto. But yes, everybody, I hope this is a story that you all enjoyed. I'm really hoping that it's something that none of you all have actually seen before, and yeah, it's something that I really enjoyed, and something that I've been dying to kind of share with you guys for a long time. But I think the thought process of what was going on, when I very first started this channel, that maybe the story was just a little bit dark. But I think at this point, that's not a problem, alright? We've covered a lot of Hellraiser. We covered a lot of very, unsavory stories, you might say. And I just knew that it was finally time, and it feels good to have finally done so. But yes, everybody, if you're new to this channel, go check out some new content. If you do enjoy this, please consider subscribing, kind of maybe leaving me a comment down below. As I said in the beginning of the video, I'd be very much interested to actually see what your guys' most valued Batman stories are, alright? I absolutely love finding a really good one. For me, I would have to say Batman the Killing Joke and Batman the Damned have probably been, the two stories in the Batman franchise that have really stood out for me. But nonetheless, I'd really like to hear your opinion, so feel free to do so. And thank you so much for sticking with me for so long. I've really been doing this channel for quite a long time at this point, and I'm really proud of the catalog that I've tried to bring you all. And I definitely could not have done it without all you amazing people, kind of talking me down below, talking to me in other places. And yeah, you guys have brought me such a level of joy and brought me such an excitement to actually do these videos that, it's something that really makes my life better, something to be excited about. And yeah, I thank you all so much, and I will see you all on the next episode of From the Heart. Have a fantastic night, everybody.